Welcome to the Geek Easy, fellow geeks. Let's open a beverage of your choice. Because today I am going to be doing a review of Masters of the Universe. Okay, let's start out with saying I was not a fan of the cartoon. Never have been. I grew up when it was on. I had watched a couple episodes of it, and it just wasn't my thing. It was directed more towards kids, which a lot of animated stuff were at the time. And while I liked some of them, Masters of the Universe wasn't something I enjoyed. So I had heard this movie was coming out, and a friend wanted to go see it. He needed a ride, needed someone to take him because he can't go by himself. So I was like, okay, I want to go check this out and see how it was, because I had heard a couple things about it here and there. All that to say, I was just going in with low expectations. And boy, were they surpassed. This movie was awesome. Alright. So, first of all, they took the material, realized the camp of it, knew full well how kind of campy it was, how just weird it was, and leaned into the camp while also being kind of serious with it, if that makes sense. Okay? When you have some of these movies, do movies of TV shows, they will try and ground the things and have change a lot of the costumes or change the way something looks to give it a more realistic look. This one, they did not do that. I think virtually everything in there was show accurate. Lockjaw to Fisto to all these people, everything, Skeletor, and we'll get to that thing here in a minute or two. Everything was just accurate to the way it was in the show. The talking Battle Cat, I think it was, not, and everything. And they kept the camp in there, but they also tried to deliver a fairly serious message to it, like they did in the show. So that I really liked, and there were some really just laugh out loud funny moments where they're leaning into the campness of someone named Fisto, because that sounds like something a child would come up with, and in fact, in the movie, that is why he was named Fisto, because young Adam, before as a child, he saw these people, didn't know their name, and then, and he was sent away. He called this guy Fisto because he had a giant, Fist, and there was what was it, Head something, and that's what he called them because he didn't know their names, and you never do find out their real names in the movie. They don't give any back history on them, and as far as I know, there isn't any in the comics or in the show. So that was something they leaned into on there, and they had Adam on Earth working for HR at his company as an adult, and they sort of just were making fun of the way HR dealt with stuff. There was the way they did it. There was like good things they were trying to say, but just the whole way the whole HR culture dealt with stuff, and so they were just razzing on that and just leaned into that to give a lot of good comedy elements in there. But they also had some messages in there of what was it? Yes, you sometimes about men have to do this, but it's not the violence. It's you're not doing this. You're protecting somebody, and there might be a couple other ways to do this, but you're not going out and punching someone. As a man, it's not your job to do violence, but you need to protect somebody, and sometimes you have to do it in other ways of talking. Talking works, but sometimes you just have to go out and fist somebody, punch somebody. And they give these characters a lot of growth on there. And what was I gonna? There was something I was gonna go on there, but there was a lot of really good, like I said, humor in there, because he's got his sword on Earth that he managed to get back, and he gets in trouble for having the sword, and the cops are taking him away, and one of them makes a Highlander reference as a joke. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's one thing this movie like this is missing, is a good Queen soundtrack. Because a movie like this, you have Flash Gordon, you have Highlander. What do you associate most, not most, but a lot with those movies? Queen, right? About half an hour later, you get some Queen. So they've got that. And the performances in there were just very well done, because there is a delicate balance in there between the camp, because it is, good camp requires you to go over the top, between the camp and the seriousness, and you don't want to get it too much or too bad. And Idris Elba, who plays was it Master at Arms, does a really good job. The daughter does a really good job. I guess that was She-Ra. I guess she was going to wind up being. The He-Man guy does young Adam does a really good job. The one person I was worried about was Skeletor, because who they had playing it. And surprisingly enough, one, you couldn't recognize who it was playing him, and so if you didn't know who was playing him, yeah. But it was done very, very well. Jared Leto, yeah, it's Jared Leto, and he, this may have been right for him, and it wasn't like some of his other performances, like the Joker and the Suicide Squad and Morbius. Did a really good job. Oh, and speaking of Skeletor, when there is a kind of a discussion, underlying theme of good and evil in this movie, and the way they talk about it, someone says, they're talking about his motivations, and they say, well, he's just evil. And Adam says, well, there's got to be more to it than that. There's got to be more. And she says, no, he's just evil. I mean, when you have a skeleton for a face, you're evil. Which, that's all you need for the motivation for a movie like this. And that's with the camp. So it was awesome. Now, there's a couple of things in there where it took a couple a little long on some parts because it was like a 2 hour 15-minute movie, and one thing I found a tad annoying, well, not annoying, I shouldn't say that, but a tad, it's like, okay, enough, was his naivete. I mean, sometimes it's like, dude, okay, that's got us. After a while, you're gonna start losing some of that when dealing with something like that, and you can't be trusting someone again and again and again for something. If they've kicked you in the teeth a few times, enough times, you've got to stop trusting them. And so it took a little longer for him to do that, stop trusting him, than I felt should have. But other than that, it was a very fun movie. Like I said, the writing was great. The acting was really good. The special effects were top notch. And I just found this a thoroughly entertaining movie. I was laughing and just found myself, cheering in a couple scenes where there's a certain cameo in this movie where it was just like perfection. So I'm going to recommend this. I'm going to give this a 4.75 out of 5, just because there's a couple points that took a little too long, and sometimes they're a tad heavy on the messaging, but that's par for the course for He-Man, because it was supposed to be, aside from being a pretty much an advertisement for toys, which is what it was created to be, something for children, and so they went heavily on that one. Oh, and they even had the stinger at the end with the "What did we learn today?" thing, which was pretty funny. But yeah, I'm gonna give this a 4.75 out of 5 and say, yeah, this is awesome, and give it a shot. But anyway, let me know what you thought of it if you saw it. Like, subscribe, possibly share, most of all. Enjoy your movies.